Obviously, a lot of people are very curious. How is this going to be compatible with 5th edition?
Yeah, these books are a continuation of 5th edition by having an extended conversation with the broader D&D community.
Well, it's time that we decided what the heck to finally call the 2024 version of the core rules of Dungeons & Dragons. At least that's what's being said in this latest video from Wizard of the Coast titled, What are the 2024 5th edition core rulebooks? This is a great question.
Obviously, a lot of people are very curious.
I also want to point out, I don't blame this guy at all. I don't blame Todd Kenrick at all leading this interview here. And please excuse me if I seem like I'm rambling, because I totally am. I'm just kind of going off a couple bullet points here because this is just a confusing topic, and mostly I'm just trying to gauge the community's opinion on this and elaborate a little on a poll where I've already tried to gauge that opinion and really see what people are thinking. First, we had the next evolution of D&D. Roll clip of Ray Winninger calling it that.
I can actually reveal today that we have, earlier this year, we began work on the next evolution of Dungeons & Dragons, new versions of the core rule books, which will be coming out in 2024 to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Dungeons & Dragons.
This was when Wizard of the Coast first officially announced that they would be, in fact, doing some rules update for the 50th anniversary of D&D, which is this big event, right? Coming in 2024, it's worth celebrating, the timing makes sense, let's do this. And sometime after that was when we finally got that first official announcement for 1D&D. And into this announcement, because now here's where people got confused, but in this announcement, they said that 1D&D is the umbrella term for the rules update, the VTT, which was like this whole huge announcement, oh my gosh, look at this 3-dimensional virtual tabletop, and the big push of kind of everything just going on D&D Beyond. Not that we were going full digital, that a lot of people misinterpreted that, but all three of those initiatives were under Project 1D&D. But this term quickly got confused and went from being this general thing to being a much more specific thing, because every time a rules update, Unearthed Arcana would come out, we, like I and others, would say like, oh, 1D&D rules update, let's check it out, and we'll go through the PDF and look for all the fun changes and, maybe a couple weird changes that are in there. But we were all calling it 1D&D. And it's not totally our fault here, because even in that official 1D&D video, that first one that really announced they'd be doing the changes, making the VTT, etc., we can remember here that they said we're going beyond editions now, and that this game is just D&D. I'll play the clip of that too.
We are no longer in the position where we think of D&D as an edition. It's just D&D.
Now, toward the end of the video, we're actually going to talk about how that could be a good thing if done the right way. I'll give a great example of that. But for now, we're really focusing on Dungeons & Dragons and how they are handling it. And most recently, as in this video and actually back at the WotC Creator Summit in January? When did that happen? April? No, that was April. OGL was January. Jeremy Crawford, again, very nice guy, even said, and I'll play the quote of this if I have it. I might have a little recording from the summit.
This is the big secret of D&D, and it's an open secret. 5th edition is actually 6th edition, because 3.5 was 4th edition. And the reason why I say that is because 3.5 required you to replace all your books. And so for me, by definition, that's a new edition.
New versions of the core rule books.
And I can tell you, as the person who converted every one of those monsters, that was a new edition. And this is why I'm saying this with experience from the trenches. You will be able to open up your Curse of Strahd and run it with the new core books. You can also make a character with the 2014 Player's Handbook and the options in Tasha's Cauldron and Xanathar's Guide, and have that character at the same table as a character made with the 2024 books. So this is why I say what we're doing has not been done before for the game. So that's why it can be difficult to find, like, well, what do we call it?
Obviously, a lot of people are very curious.
And so what we've just been calling it is it's just 5th edition, but it's 10 years older now. And so we're revising it, and we want to fill the new books with exciting stuff so that people are getting them not because they feel they have to, but because you want to.
Basically, the conclusion in this video was that for now, they're going to call it the 2024 rules, but once 2024 hits and those books are out, they're just going to call it the Player's Handbook. And then I guess if you had to reference the old one, you would say the 2014 Player's Handbook. But I found this kind of confusing, and I know I'm not the only one, because then I made a poll about it, and a lot of people responded with some different answers. So ignoring the 3% of people who chose to comment with their own term for the edition, the smallest group of people, 6%, said that they would call this new version of the core rules 5e, plain and simple. Meaning, only 6% of this, sample size are actually complying with what Wizard of the Coast wants to call the rules. Now, right above that, 8%, we have a group of people saying 5e, but like PHB2. And this kind of makes sense to me because, okay, we can probably get away with calling it 5e as long as we're clear that at least this is a new book, right? That's what they did, I think, in 3rd or 3.5. Definitely in 4th edition, there was Player Handbook 1, Player's Handbook 2. I think there was even 3, and maybe beyond. I don't know. But they kept printing Player's Handbooks. On its face, it makes sense that this could work. The next group of people, 18%, went with, it's all just D&D anyway.
It's just D&D.
And this idea that it's all just D&D is something that I've really opened my eyes to as I've been experimenting with and reading many more new systems, and realizing that as long as you are rolling a d20, trying to roll high, and you're using strength, dex, con, you probably have some fighters, some wizards, maybe a cleric, maybe a sneaky guy, there's spells at different levels, and you're fighting dragons and owlbears and goblins. You're playing Dungeons and Dragons. And maybe that sounds like sacrilege to some people because, that means that Pathfinder is Dungeons and Dragons, and like Dungeon Crawl Classics is Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah, like the creators of those games were pretty open with the fact that they did base it off of the OGL, like heavily inspired by Dungeons and Dragons. So part of me does reason that, maybe we don't really need a new name for it, because the changes that are being made appear so small and so minor compared to what makes D&D D&D. And that is all those things I just mentioned, which have stayed the same over 50 years and stayed the same in numerous games that have evolved from D&D since. But then the largest percentage here, 65, went with 5.5e, 6e, or 1D&D. It's a new edition. And it makes sense to see that result here on YouTube. Myself and you, I guess, if you're watching this, we're part of this group that really cares about like how this game evolves because it's such a big part of our lives. To some of us, when we've invested months or years into a character that does a certain thing a certain way, when that's changed, it means a lot. And so to us, it does feel like this game should have a new name now, at least a new edition. Call it 5.5 because it's clearly built on 5th edition, but different. Maybe just call it 6e because it's gotten a little too far from 5e. Or we just call it 1D&D? But let's start with a quick reality. They can't call it 1D&D anymore because 1D&D's name got dragged through the freaking mud during the OGL controversy. So now they just needed to cut that off and get rid of it. But to an extent, I would actually be okay with 1D&D as a term because it does separate it as something new, something different. And under that name, 1D&D, they could take the approach of just releasing minor updates online and then changing them in new printings of the book as they come out. And to highlight why that could be fine, here's this game that I've talked about a decent amount on this channel over the last couple of months, Dungeon Crawl Classics. This is the 9th printing of the DCC core rulebook, which was first printed, I want to say, in like 2011 or 2012. So in 12 years, we've had 9 versions of the core book, but really it's pretty much the same. People are having fun with it, and there is a whole like third-party community producing stuff for this game too. So when they do new printings, it's really like they've fixed the typos over the years. They create new covers that people might want to buy. So I'm trying to say that model of, hey, we just make minor changes forever can work. It's been working for over a decade for this game. D&D could do that. I just don't think they are doing it. And my main evidence for that, I'm sure like everyone watching this has seen this to some degree as well. I just finished a little campaign of Lost Mine of Phandelver, and one of my players, when they hit level 3, was a fighter and chose the Rune Knight subclass from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. And oh my gosh, this guy was invincible. Like, it was fun, it was awesome, but if we had somebody also playing a champion fighter, they would have looked like such a dweeb compared to him. So what I'm saying here is that 5th edition is barely even compatible with 5th edition anymore. With the player experience being so different between these two ends, along this timeline of 5e, it is a different game. I can't pinpoint exactly when it happened, probably somewhere around Tasha's.
You can also make a character with the 2014 Player's Handbook and the options in Tasha's Cauldron and Xanathar's Guide, and have that character at the same table as a character made with the 2024 books.
But at the same time, one other thing I have to throw out here is that as a third-party publisher of D&D materials myself, check out my Patreon where I publish a new 5e one-shot adventure every month. Really fun themes, designed for super easy prep. Each one comes with a new monster, new magic item, and a really detailed NPC. Also like notes on how to roleplay the NPC and how to run the monster in combat. It's great stuff. I'm really proud of how we have it all laid out. But what I was trying to say here is if you're a third-party publisher who can't say, my book is made for Dungeons & Dragons, you have to say 5e compatible. Calling it 5e, this new version, just continuing to call it 5e, is actually really helpful. So with all that in mind, I think we've covered the full spectrum of why 1D&D makes sense, why 5.5 or 6e makes sense, why 5e can make sense to a degree. Let me know down in the comments, what do you think? Because ultimately, we the community are going to be the ones who decide what this next edition is actually called. Oh, and definitely share this video because I really want as many people as possible to be weighing in on what we need to call this next edition. And with that in mind, I highly recommend you do check out this video where I discuss how I've been homebrewing 5th edition to be more fun at my table, and consider joining the Bob World Builder Patreon community who really directly supports what I do, this channel, this whole community, and get a lot of cool rewards each month. But thank you for your support, and keep building.